Good evening. Welcome everyone for a great evening today. Um, First of all, I have to tell you we have extraordinary panelists today, speakers. We are very fortunate to have them here. One of them is Ms. Linda McMahon, and they don't need any introduction. The other one is Senator Ben Cardin. He's going to join us. Right now, he is voting on the Senate floor. As soon as it's done, he's going to join us. So this is the Finance Grant Challenge Series, the last one in the series for this semester. And we have tackled very important topics. These include the US federal budget deficit, is it sustainable? The future of digital assets and fintech, the validity of student loan forgiveness. And today we're going to dwell on entrepreneurship and small business.
Here it is.
A topic close to heart of our institution. Okay, Senator is here. Okay. The event will examine the challenges confronting small businesses and startups and discuss what policymakers and universities can do to increase dynamism for both. The Smith School stands as a beacon of entrepreneurship, having launched one of the first centers of entrepreneurship in the business school in the nation, for which we got an award in early 1990s from NASDAQ. Our efforts have not gone unnoticed. In the latest rankings, we are number 5 in the nation for entrepreneurship by Princeton Review. Recently, the Smith School embarked on a new endeavor to train AI for small businesses in Prince George's County. It is funded by a grant, and there are 50 slots. I was just told today there are over 200 small businesses who want to participate, and I heard it's not going very well for Prince George's County. They want us to do more. So we are very enthusiastic in participating in this entrepreneurship and small business development, and we are very proud to play a very big role. And before I introduce Professor Mike Faulkender, I would like to say a few words of why this event is so important for us. Our strategic plan and the campus plan emphasizes furthering intellectual freedom and intellectual curiosity. This is to foster an open marketplace of ideas. That is very important for us. We do not want to preach what we believe to the students, but we believe that the students should hear different viewpoints, listen to different perspectives, evaluate different options, and have a civil discourse. That's very important, to have the civil discourse, and then make up your mind of what you want to believe in, which has to be based on some evidence. So we ask you to hear our speakers, respect their thoughts and ideas, and engage in a civil discourse. We're all going to be better from that. So let me introduce now our Professor Mike Faulkender, who has spearheaded this particular initiative of Finance Grant Challenges series. Mike is the Dean's Professor of Finance here at the Smith School. After joining UMD in 2008, he became Associate Dean of Master's Programs in 2017. Mike stepped down from the role at the beginning of 2019 to join the US Department of Treasury, serving as the Assistant Secretary for Economic Policy. In that role, he advised the Secretary on domestic and international issues that impacted the economy, particularly during a COVID-19 pandemic. He assisted in negotiating the CARES Act and was the senior Treasury official who led the implementation of the Paycheck Protection Program, which likely saved the economy from total collapse at that time. And Senator was heavily engaged in that deliberation as well. In January 2021, he was awarded the Alexander Hamilton Award for Distinguished Leadership, the highest service award granted at the Department of Treasury. His research lies at the intersection of financial economics and public policy. Examples include the job impacts of Paycheck Protection Program, corporate capital structure, corporate liquidity, and executive compensation. His work has been published in top academic finance journals, received numerous best paper awards, and has been cited in Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, New York Times, and including my favorite channel, CNBC, has been on that as well, right? He has written numerous op-eds in Wall Street Journal, Baltimore Sun, and Washington Times, as well as regular appearing on many news channels as well. Thank you, Mike, for hosting this wonderful events, and I'll hand it over to you to introduce our distinguished panelists and speakers. And once again, we are very honored to have our speakers here. And to you now.
Thank you, Dean Kanana. It's an incredible privilege to host this event. I'm incredibly grateful to our guests, Senator Cardin and Linda McMahon. As the Dean said, I probably don't need to do much of an introduction of them, but I do want to give you just some of their background to understand the accomplishments that they bring to this conversation. So Senator Ben Cardin was first elected to the Senate in 2006. He's a senior member of the Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee, the Senate Finance Committee, and the Environment and Public Works Committee. From 1987 to 2006, Senator Cardin represented Maryland's 3rd congressional district, the U.S. House of Representatives, serving for 17 years on the Ways and Means Committee. He was a member of the Maryland House of Delegates from 1967 to including as its Speaker from 1979 to 1986. He graduated from the University of Maryland School of Law and earned his bachelor's degree from the University of Pittsburgh. He is a member of the U.S. Naval Academy Board of Visitors, the Johns Hopkins University Institute for Policy Studies National Advisory Board, and the St. Mary's College Advisory Board, Center for Study of Democracy. Senator Cardin, as the Dean mentioned, is joining us by Zoom due to Senate votes this afternoon, but the fact that he made such an effort to appear with us demonstrates his dedication to this topic, and I'm incredibly grateful for him to have made the time to join us. And then to my right, I have Administrator Linda McMahon, who currently serves as the chair of the board and chair of the Center for the American Worker at the America First Policy Institute. Prior to that, Linda served as President Trump's administrator of the Small Business Administration. At the SBA, Administrator McMahon focused on rural development and championing women entrepreneurs and military veterans. She is probably best known for being founder and CEO of the sports entertainment company Titan Sports, which today is known as World Wrestling Entertainment, which she ran for nearly 30 years before retiring to pursue public service. Linda is originally from New Bern, North Carolina, earned her bachelor's degree from East Carolina University, and Linda and I had the chance to meet with some of our student entrepreneurs earlier this afternoon, and I'm incredibly grateful that you made the time for joining us this evening. So thank you both for joining us. And
Thank you.
to set a little bit of the foundation and bring all of you up to speed on the important role that small business plays in our nation, according to the SBA, there are more than 33 million small businesses in the United States, and they employ more than 61 million people, which accounts for 46% of private sector employment. Nearly 63% of net new jobs since 1995 were created by small businesses. The desire to hire continues today, with the most recent survey by the National Federation of Independent Business finding that 40% of small businesses have job openings that they're unable to fill. This difficulty finding enough workers has led to them expecting sales to drop this year on an inflation-adjusted basis, and we're therefore seeing some of the lowest optimism results since December 2012. And so our conversation tonight recognizes that this important engine of growth, and we need to explore how policymakers, universities can and should ensure that small businesses remain a key source of growth and innovation in our country. And so with that, I'd like to turn it over to the Senator to see if he'd like to give some opening remarks also on this topic before we get into some questions.
Well, Dean Faulconer, first of all, thank you very much. It's really a pleasure to be with you. Linda McMahon, it's nice to see you again. We had a chance to work pretty closely together when she was the administrator of the Small Business Administration. It's really good to be with you. I'm sorry I can't be with you in person. We are having votes this evening. There's a vote on right now. But the good thing about a Senate 15-minute vote, it usually lasts about an hour, so I think I'm safe for a little time. So let me start by just way of background. My grandfather, who was an immigrant, came to this country around 1900, decided to start a small grocery store, and decided that there was a better way to do things. And he pretty much developed a wholesale food business from scratch, and it became the largest family-owned or non-publicly owned food distributorship company in the United States. So small businesses proved to me that it can be the root for wealth accumulation, for economic opportunity, for job growth, for innovation. It's what drives the American economy. So I am very much believing that our climate for small businesses is very instrumental in fairness, in equity, in wealth growth, and in job growth and innovation in America. There's more jobs created by small businesses, more innovation by small businesses. To me, that's why I asked to serve on the Small Business Committee when I was elected to the Senate in 2007. I was the only new senator. There was 10 senators elected that year. I was the only one who specifically requested the Small Business Committee. And that was one of the reasons. And I was proud to have been the chair of the committee prior to taking on the chairmanship of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. There's another characteristic about small businesses. They don't have deep pockets. It's a challenge for a small business to deal with an economic downturn or a disaster or a challenge in the labor market or high interest rates. All those present unusual challenges for small businesses because they don't have the same bandwidth, same capacity to deal with those issues. It's particularly difficult for traditionally underserved communities. Maybe because Parent J. Mitchell, who was the first African-American congressman from Maryland, who represented me when I in the 1970s in the Congress, he became the chair of the Small Business Committee and started the first set aside for minority small businesses. That it's motivated me that we have to have tools to help particularly traditionally underserved communities. So I have been a major proponent of the 8A program, of the Community Advantage 7A programs, the CDFIs, the MBDAs. All those to me are important opportunities to expand opportunities for traditionally underserved communities. And I think we made progress. Last year, we had the largest single growth in new small businesses in the history of our country, and it was led by women-owned small businesses and women of color particularly. So that's been my, I hope, contribution to make sure that there's more opportunity through small business for economic growth, for wealth accumulation, to narrow the wealth gap in America, and to add to the strength of our economy. And I hope that we can get into a discussion. There are a lot of areas I hope we can talk about. But with that, let me turn it back to you.
Thank you, Senator. Linda, please.
Well, there's not a lot I could add to that. You laid that out so beautifully, Senator, and thank you very much. It was such a pleasure to serve with you when I was at SBA and to work with the committee, because you did have such an understanding of small business and were such a strong advocate for it. So it was always a pleasure. And I knew it wasn't just waiting for meeting time. I could pick up the phone, as I did on several occasions, and just get your input and to see how we could move some things along, or just to get your advice. And I very much appreciated that kind of hands-on approach that you had. So thank you very much for that support that you gave to me personally at SBA. I thank you very much for that. When President-elect Trump asked me to serve as the administrator of the Small Business Administration, he said, I have a novel idea. He said, I'd like to have someone in that office who's actually built a business and who understands what it's like to grow a small business and how the impact that taxes and regulations can have on small businesses. And so I was very honored to be asked to serve in that position. And it was really the honor of a lifetime to do that. I think during my term as administrator of SBA, when I traveled the country, and I did something that no other administrator has done. I went to all 68 district offices in all 50 states in about 14 months. So we had a heavy travel schedule, but the purpose of doing that really was to hear from not only our district offices and the issues that they were having, but also I toured small businesses and also had press conferences so that I could get input from both sides and to see what could we really do at SBA? How could we really make a difference? And how was that information I was learning going to translate and to be able to helping our small businesses with their access to capital, with development of their business plans, with working with seasoned CEOs to help them grow their businesses. And so I thoroughly enjoyed that whole aspect in my time at SBA. So I was very appreciative of having that opportunity.
So the questions that we have tonight, some of them are from me, a lot of them are from the audience. And so, but Senator, I wanted to start with something that you and I worked very closely on together, and that I have always viewed as my proudest professional accomplishment, was working with you on the Paycheck Protection Program. As Linda indicated, there were a number of times where the secretary and I got on the phone with you to understand your thoughts on how we could make the program work better. And I also know you were a very strong supporter of the economic injury disaster loans. Could you, in your words, talk about why that assistance was so critical, and what did you think about the success of those programs?
Michael, thanks for your help on that, and thanks for the question. It's a very important question, because I want to answer the last part of the question first and come back and tell you how we did it. I think the program was extremely successful. I think it saved our economy during the COVID. We did not realize at the time that our economy would be shut down for the length of time that it was. But there's no question, if we didn't have the Paycheck Protection Program, if we didn't have eligibility for the EIDL Emergency Injury Disaster Loan Program, if we didn't have those tools available, and I could add also the shuttered venues and the restaurant revitalization funds that came a little bit later, many, many, many more small businesses would not have survived. There would have been a lot more unemployed people. The unemployment funds would have been hit at a much higher rate than they were. So the taxpayers would have been would have foot the bill, the same bill, but our economy would not have been anywhere near as strong as it was during the COVID pandemic. I think we were all pleasantly surprised that, knowing the length of this pandemic, that our economy never reached the depth that we thought it would. And we were able to keep our economy moving and people employed and small businesses alive. Some lost, we know, so we didn't save them all, but we saved the core economy through small businesses. Now, how do we do this? At the time, Marco Rubio, Republican, was chairman of the committee. I was the ranking Democrat, the lead Democrat on the Small Business Committee. The two of us sat down together with Treasury, with the Small Business Administration, and say, what could we do? And we had to do something that was pretty difficult for legislators to do. We had to develop a program that would get money out quickly so small businesses could survive, and recognize that there may be abuses. And we recognize that there would be higher abuses than we would like to see. But the trade-off is, do we want to kill the baby, or do we want to try to save our small businesses? And we developed basically a self-determination system with accountability. And there's some small businesses today that are paying the price for abusing the system. But we wanted to get money out quickly, and it worked. It really worked. Now, there were different priorities. The Democrats and Republicans had different priorities. The Republicans are very interested in using the existing financial mechanisms that we had, because they had confidence in the traditional financing mechanisms that were available. They wanted to get money out quickly. Democrats wanted to make sure nonprofits were also eligible, because we know nonprofits are a huge driver of our economy. And we also wanted to focus on the small businesses that didn't have strong banking relations. So we wanted to do more to help through CDFIs and non-conventional banking. And we worked together and got that done. And we not only passed the Paycheck Protection Program, we extended the Paycheck Protection Program. We put more money into the Paycheck Protection Program. And all that was done with overwhelming bipartisan support. Because we also recognize one other important factor. And by the way, the EIDL program was set up with small grants to help the really small businesses that we thought was also very important at the time. But one other thing, small businesses cannot deal with regulatory burdens like big companies can. So we had to keep the regulatory process as easy as possible during this period of time, and we did. And it was the right thing. I think it'll go down as one of the great moments of what we were able to do to keep an economy going during the pandemic.
Yes, Senator, I can tell you that one of the proudest moments of my professional life was that was Friday, June 5th, we got the May jobs report. And as many people may not remember from that time, the forecast was 14% of the 20%. And instead it actually declined. The market expected to lose It was an incredible accomplishment, and that was the result of the program. Linda, you had stepped down from being administrator prior to the pandemic, but it was your leadership that built the team and the capabilities at the Small Business Administration. Can you talk about your work to elevate the SBA and how you think the organization navigated its role during the pandemic?
Well, I was incredibly proud and grateful to be on the sidelines during PPP. I honestly admit that because that's partially true. The other side of me knew what the capabilities at SBA were and some of the challenges they might have had. So I would like to have sort of been in the mix of that. But I honestly was approached by many small business owners to, even though I wasn't in office at the time, to sort of say, okay, can you give me direction? Can you help me do that? I was able to reach out to different people and give them good direction. But the paycheck, the PPP really was, as you said, Senator Cardin, it was a lifeline. It was a lifesaver. And I know many small businesses that would absolutely have gone under, without it. But look at what happened during the pandemic. When we talk about entrepreneurship, when we talk about how innovative and creative entrepreneurs are, suddenly restaurants, they couldn't have people coming into their restaurants. They had carryout programs, curbside programs. They put their people to work. PPP was able to help protect that overhead during that time so that they could be creative in how they were continuing to get their product out to the people who needed it. And I'm not sure that this was a direct correlation, but also look at Grubhub and the different programs that developed off of that. Now, you just call up, you get stuff delivered everywhere, and it's like, it's always outgrowths. And if there's one thing, and I know I'm drifting off the topic a little bit, but I have to tell you, I am such a strong supporter of entrepreneurs and how creative they are and how committed they are, to their businesses and to their ideas. And basically what happens is when they get thrown a curveball, they find a way around it. And that's part of what schools like University of Maryland and the Smith Business School and the entrepreneurship programs that you have here help you understand is what goes into the basics of that entrepreneurship and the basics of that business to be able to be nimble when something's thrown in your face. And I can say that from experience because I went bankrupt one time. I lost everything. My house was auctioned off in the community. My car was repossessed in the driveway when I was pregnant with our second child. So I know what it's like to put it all on the line, lose it, and then go back for it. And my motto always was, it's not how you fall down or how many times, but it's how you get back up. And so you've just got to continue to have that driving force, within you to continue with what you want to do. But that is based on the fact that you've got a sound business principle, you manage your cash flow, you do all of those things. So in this room, I'm sure there are a lot of budding and maybe already existing entrepreneurs. I met with two of them earlier today, and I'm looking around to see if I see them in here. But they were I was so impressed, by what both of them had to say and the support that you're giving them here. This is just, it's amazing. I'm just so pleased to be in this environment. Thank you, Dean.
So a common theme that came up in a lot of the questions that were submitted was, what are the secrets to success? And so, Linda, you already talked about it a little bit. So, Senator, what do you see in the most resilient small businesses that have persevered through tough times? What does it take for small businesses to be successful? And what can some of our entrepreneurs in the audience?
Well, let me agree completely with Linda. I saw during COVID incredible ingenuity by the smaller companies to adjust to the reality of a pandemic and figure out how they could modify their business or set up side businesses to deal with the realities of the pandemic so that they could keep their employment. And it was wonderful to see that. But I see that every day. I mean, if you have a good idea, if you know that you can do it better than someone else can do it, if you have the drive, and you have that entrepreneurship spirit, what we need to do is try to help you overcome some of the challenges that small businesses face. Access to capital, clearly a challenge for young entrepreneurs. Workforce, how can you get the trained people that you need when you're in competition with larger companies? How can we break through all of the bureaucratic nightmares that businesses have to go through that small companies just don't have the capacity to have to deal with, whether it's the regulatory system, the tax code, et cetera. If we can remove and help remove those barriers, your creative ideas will turn into job growth and wealth. And we saw that. I'll give you just one, the prime example in Maryland is Under Armour, started in a garage. Look at it today. That was a University of Maryland grad, I'm going to tell you, that started that company. I look down the street where you are at College Park and look at those. In many cases, there's student entrepreneurs starting businesses in your incubator environment that are creating new opportunities, whether it's use of 3D technology or you see in the biotech fields. I go down the 270 corridor and I see all these really small companies and these incubators that I know several have already been bought out by larger companies that have merged, et cetera. So what it takes to succeed, it takes entrepreneurship, it takes a resilient spirit that recognizes you're gonna get knocked down at times, you got to get back up, and it takes creativity as how you can overcome the challenges that you're going to face. You're going to face challenges as a small company, but don't get discouraged from that. Find a way to get around that. Stick to your ideas. If you're right, you are going to succeed.
So historically, economic growth and innovation have come more from small businesses than from established businesses. They're often more agile in responding to changes in customer needs and in identifying and deploying new technologies. However, the world's becoming more complex and technologies are becoming even more advanced. And so there are some who fear that small businesses may not be able to compete. Linda, to you first, do you think we're losing our innovative spirit and entrepreneurial dynamism that has historically propelled transformational breakthroughs, or can they overcome some of these technology challenges that they're confronting?
I don't see any decline in entrepreneurial spirit. I just think it's, it's different areas that they're competing in. You just mentioned technology. When I was touring all of the many businesses that I toured when I was at SBA, and I'm not out in the marketplace as much right now touring those many businesses, all of the incubator labs that I saw of technology, of just unbelievable things, that were going on. I would go into an incubator building. It looked like a warehouse. And there'd be like cube after cube after cube, and all of these innovative technology companies just working on different programs. And so the excitement that they all had, whether it was a small something that they were working on or a huge development that was going to change the world. Now, I was incredibly encouraged by that entrepreneurial spirit that was still going on. Do big companies have the opportunity with their R&D numbers to foster that more than smaller companies? But hey, Zuckerberg was in a garage, right? He did okay. And so I think there is a lot of that that's still going on. One of the entrepreneurs that I met with earlier today, he said that I asked him, I said, where is your inventory? He said, in my garage. My mom's not too happy about it, but he's doing okay, and he's making steps and he's growing. So he's not daunted by the fact that there is a lot of regulation out there because he hasn't encountered it yet. But as you encounter more and more of the regulatory environment, then you realize how much more capital it takes to comply with that regulation. And that's why, as Senator Cardin said, it's important, from a government perspective, that we make sure that the regulations that are being put in place, actually are those that are going to advance what we're doing and not really try to shut it down. And let me give you a classic example. I ran for the Senate. I wasn't able to join you, Senator Cardin. I ran for the U.S. Senate in Connecticut. And as I was touring small businesses in the state, I came in contact with one small business that was a nickel plating company. Now, they have to use a lot of chemicals, et cetera, to do the nickel plating. And I asked him about regulation, and he said, look, I get it. He said, government ought to come in. Regulations ought to make sure that I've got the proper exhaust that's going to make sure the fumes aren't going to be poisonous to my people working, or that I'm not releasing those poisonous fumes into the environment, and that I'm taking all the precautions in here that it's a safe environment for my employees. He said, but when a regulator came in and went through everything we were doing and then was writing up something at the end, he said, I asked him, he said, geez, what tell me what it is I need to do. And are you coming back in 30 days and give me a chance to rectify this? He said, nope. He said, actually, what I found today is that your signs on your restrooms are not regulation size for men and women. And so therefore it's going to be a $5,000 fine. Now, this was an egregious overreach. And to that small business owner, $5,000 out of his bottom line with no opportunity to correct it, but he was just going to have to pay the fine. That's when small businesses really feel the pinch. Now, thank goodness that's one of those stories that's not the norm. Normally, regulators come in and they do find things that are for the safety of the individuals or protection for the environment. They ought to be in place, but we don't need to over-regulate our businesses and really handcuff them. And I think we have to be very mindful. And Senator Cardin was always such a strong proponent of small businesses that he really did work very hard to keep that regulatory environment under control. Well, thank you for that. And we worked pretty closely on that hand in hand.
If I could add to that, thank you, Linda, for those comments. And you are correct. It's a struggle at times, but there needs to be considerations given to smaller companies as we do regulations and as we look at the burdens that they confront in complying with well-intended laws. But the size of the business, it's just not possible to meet the standards of larger companies, and we have to take that into consideration. I want to answer your question directly about technology and small companies. It's as healthy as ever today. And let me just give you one example. We have the SBIR STTR program. That's set aside for government research to help small companies. The STTR program deals with commercialization of new technologies. And it's a program that was established so that some of the research funds that are spent by government agencies get into smaller companies. We almost missed the deadline for the renewal of that program, just I think it was last year or the year before. And the alarm bells went off, not by the small business community, by the Department of Defense, that it was going to jeopardize America's national defense if they could not get these partnerships with these smaller companies because of the innovation that smaller companies are providing on defense-related issues. I could also say the same thing was true in the biotech fields. Smaller companies produce many, many, many more patents than larger companies do. This is where innovation takes place. And if we're going to be on the cutting edge of discoveries in the healthcare field, if we're going to be on the cutting edge of a defense weapon system that can keep us secure, we need the input of these smaller companies and what they're doing in order to hit that cutting edge. And the proof of the pudding is the Defense Department really said, if you can't get it done for all agencies, we must have it for DOD, and they were ready to put it in the NDA bill. And finally, we were able to extend it for all the bills, for all the agencies, but not all the companies. So my point is this: it's very healthy from the point of view of ingenuity and innovation and tech development. We have to make sure they get the support they need so that they can overcome the obstacles, whether it's a regulatory obstacle, financing, or whether it's a recession or higher interest rates. That's where the government must come in to make sure that there's a healthy environment.
So moving on to one of the next constraints that businesses face, we tried in the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act to try to level the playing field more for small businesses. A lot of our multinationals were able to move some of their activities abroad for tax purposes, and small companies don't have the availability to do that. So Senator, starting with you, do you think there are more things we can do in the tax space to help small businesses compete with large enterprises? What would you suggest that we do there?
Well, absolutely. There's a lot more we need to do. We first need to recognize that small companies, by and large, do not use the corporate tax code. They are almost always in the individual tax rates using that tax code for their business operations. Now, there's certain advantages because they don't have to worry about dual taxation, but they're subject to a tax code that's really made for individual activity, not for business activity. And one of the problems we've had in America, and the motivation behind the 2017 tax bill, a bill, by the way, I did not support. I want to go on record on that. But the 2017 tax bill was a recognition that our tax code was not business friendly on the international scene. And that was hard to understand because America, why would we have much higher tax rates for corporations, considering that our government size is smaller on a pro rata basis than our competitor countries? And it made no sense. And I was a supporter of trying to get competitive rates. I've introduced a different tax code for America that would rely on a progressive consumption tax. But the point was that in doing the 2017 tax bill, we may have helped larger companies, but we did not help smaller companies. The pass-through provisions did not help the smaller companies deal with the complexities of the tax code or the tax burdens that they're confronting. So we do need to pay a lot of attention on how we develop the taxable events for smaller companies so that they can have more opportunity to reinvest in their company. We put too high of a tax on investments and savings, and it really affects small companies dramatically.
Yeah, and in addition to that too, if you're overburdening them with regulation, because small businesses can't afford to hire batteries of lawyers and accountants to make sure that they can get through the regulatory environment, they're often in conflict with regulations that they don't even know exist. So the regulations, do have to be reasonable for companies to make sure, again, as I'm being redundant from my last response, but we just have to make sure that the regulations are right-sized and well-suited for what we're trying to accomplish, to protect individuals, to protect the environment, and to protect the safety of what will be going on, especially in manufacturing plants.
So Linda, one of the things that we're also wanting to help small businesses do is increase their ability to compete abroad and to sell their products abroad. So first talking about SBA and then Senator thinking about it from a congressional standpoint, what more can we do to help businesses access international markets and sell their products abroad and broaden their market? We see a lot of companies from abroad selling into the United States. Are there things we can do to help small businesses gain access to foreign markets?
Well, I was really pleased when I was at SBA. It was the first time in the drafting of the new tariff laws and tax laws that SBA actually had a seat at the table to say, okay, this is how this impacts small businesses. So in terms of products going into Canada, for instance, more dairy products were allowed to be sold into Canada. There was a small business that was up in Vermont. I remember they took sales from ships, damaged sales, and they took those sales and cut them into all sizes and shapes and sold wallets and bags and duffel bags and things like that. But they couldn't get them across the border, into Canada until we had the new USMCA law come in. And I was very happy to see that on those kinds of drafts that SBA did finally have a seat at the table. So it's really important that we look, within our country and our exports on either side, whether they're going, south to Mexico or north to Canada, that we have those laws in place that do help small businesses get into those marketplaces. The other thing that SBA does also is it has trade forays outside of the country into other countries to show them how to exhibit what their products are so that they can export, into those other countries. So it's just really very important that we have the right tax laws in place, that we have the right subsidies in place for those companies to be able to take advantage of that.
We do have programs at the SBA, the STEP program that Linda McMahon's talking about, that does provide support for the different opportunities for small businesses to participate in forums for international business. So we do have direct programs under the SBA. We also have resource partners under the SBA that can help in that regard. Administrator McMahon was very instrumental in strengthening during her term as the administrator. We have the women's business centers. I'm proud today we have 4 women's business centers now in the state of Maryland, and including 2 at HBCUs, which I think is important on opportunity. We had the Veterans Business Outreach Center located at College Park. We have the SBDCs located at College Park. So we have resource partners available to help small businesses try to understand the international aspects of business. The state of Maryland has some really good programs to try to help small businesses navigate the international challenges of doing business abroad. So there are services available to help small companies. If they have a good product, absolutely, we want to get them into an international market because we're in a global economy today. You need to compete globally, and the way that so much business is done through the internet, you can really reduce dramatically the size of the world in your business market plans, and we want to make sure that small businesses get a share of that market.
If I may just for a second, how many of you in here are entrepreneurs? You've started your own business or have an idea for your own business? Started already?
Yeah.
What is it? What kind of, for athletes?
Yeah.
Did you say NIL? Is that what you said? Oh, okay. How's that going?
In school, it's a little bit hard to sign athletes to maintain them, but throughout the year, I was able to work with a lot of Maryland athletes as well as athletes across the globe.
So what kind of difficulty have you run in trying to grow your business? What's been an obstacle for you?
One is the NIL market is so new that there's a lot of competition.
Mhm.
Competition, yourself more to make your own specialty. With me, I specialize in items that.
Like what? Can you name one?
Like for example, I just finished a collection with Tribeca films for Robert De Niro, for vintage design tee. It hasn't really been done before, but that was a product that we worked with the studio Chicagoland that would really be something that someone really hadn't seen before. And
Terrific.
it also has a purpose that helped me position myself.
That's great. So you hear that's an innovative idea from a young entrepreneur capitalizing on NIL, name, image, and likeness, that sale, which hasn't heretofore been available to athletes and only recently approved. So that, excuse me I didn't mean to hijack
So
it.
I just want to let the
I said-
senator know, and I don't know how well he can see the
I
audience.
picked it
About-
up.
About a quarter of the audience raised their hand that they're interested in doing entrepreneurship.
That's
um,
awesome.
But it does lead me into one of the next questions, which is, both of you have worked tirelessly to increase assistance for small businesses. Both of you talked about some of the programs that SBA and that Congress have provided. I'm interested in hearing how universities can better assist in this as well. So can you talk about some of what universities have done and what more do you think we can do to facilitate more entrepreneurship? And Senator, why don't we start with you?
Well, first of all, the university has incredible capacity. We saw that with 3D printing that helped entrepreneurship on campus. Quantum computing, your arrangement with Vion, I think that is an area that is ripe for just explosions on technology growth and companies benefiting from the applications of quantum computing. And you have the direct link to help in that regard. Your lab programs can help small businesses. You have the incubator. You have a lot going on in addition to your academic programs. Your academic programs obviously are key to, I guess, develop the interest and the foundation for entrepreneurship. You have those programs in the business school, and you have them in throughout the programs at University of Maryland. It's a great school. But you also have the interest if you need some support on the lab, you need some support in regards to computing, you need some support in regards to the machine apparatus necessary to implement this. Whereas a student doesn't necessarily have a couple $100,000 that they can invest in computing, you can help them get those services or those lab works, and they can test things out. And by the way, as Linda pointed out, sometimes you're going to fail. Sometimes you're going to try something out and you're going to say, gee, I thought this was a great idea. I don't understand why no one's interested. Well, no one may be interested because it didn't work, but that happens. And you learn from those experiences. Yes, I think you can be supportive of entrepreneurs, and you can be supportive when they succeed, and you can be supportive when they need additional counseling and help. And I do think the university is uniquely qualified for that. It's part of your DNA at College Park, and I applaud you for that.
And I sit on the board of trustees of a small university in Connecticut Sacred Heart University. And one of the things that, being on that board of trustee, is that I talked so much about and try to get the board involved is working with the community. What do the businesses in our state and our community need? How can we develop the curriculum that fits what industry needs so that we can structure what we are teaching those young entrepreneurs or business students or whatever that are part of the university, so that when they leave, they have an opportunity to be part of that industry or part of that business community. Because I would bet here at University of Maryland too, you want to keep people within the state of Maryland or around in this area. You want to have those sharp minds. You want to be able to expand that as much as you can instead of having them leave. You've invested this time and effort and energy in developing these bright minds and these innovative inventions, if you will. Let's utilize them, where we are. So when I was again at SBA, and that's my most recent example, I was in West Virginia. I was in Maryland, but I was in West Virginia, and there was a community college that was there, community technical school. And right down the road from this technical school was a Toyota plant and a Toyota sales. It was a Toyota whole business center. They had actually a Toyota center in the community college, and they trained employees on the floor of the university. They went back and forth from the plant to back to the university. They got credit at the university. They got paid when they went on the floor of the plant. And when the whole program was finished, Toyota, if they wanted, could just import this trained workforce. But they weren't just trained in what Toyota needed. They were trained in what most all auto manufacturers needed. So they actually could go to many, many places. And I just thought, boy, there's a clear example of public-private partnership, with universities that can actually be ready for a trained workforce to go where those jobs are needed. And I think that's really key as well.
So nevertheless, despite these opportunities, the most recent National Federation of Independent Business survey of small business owners came back with the lowest optimism level since 2012 as owners continue to manage their numerous economic headwinds. So, Senator, starting with you, what do you think is the most important thing we can do to help small businesses overcome some of this pessimism that they're currently facing?
And I've seen those surveys, and I'm somewhat puzzled because I do think there's many opportunities in our economy. I see companies, small companies, succeeding, doing extremely well. I look at the numbers, and the numbers have been really encouraging on the number of new business starts and the growth areas and the number of jobs. So I'm somewhat surprised that there is a concern. I think part of it might be interest rates. Part of this might be a tight real estate market. Part of this might be the international instabilities that we see in Russia and Middle East and China. I think some of that may be some of the discouragements that people see. And the fact that this nation is so divided, which people are not communicating as well as they should. None of those are directly related to small business, but it may reflect some of the concerns. What I would suggest is hit this head on. And the last question you asked, what can a university do to help? We went through a lot of the things that the University of Maryland is doing today. But on entrepreneurship, I think sometimes we say, well, we'll focus on the STEM areas and we leave the rest of the programs aside. There's entrepreneurial opportunities in communication and public policy, in the arts. There are ways that we can get much more creative in so many different areas with opportunity. So I would just encourage us to think beyond just the traditional areas that for business growth, and to look at the entrepreneurial spirit as a way for America to be at the top of its game globally in so many other areas where it's so desperately needed today. We need our entrepreneurial spirit to preserve our democratic systems of government around the world. So I just hope we could expand this. And in doing that, I think we would increase optimism, which to me is a very important factor for business growth. You've got to be optimistic if you're going to put your heart and soul into a business. Give you just one more example. I was in Baltimore not too long ago after the bridge collapsed, Keith Bridge was destroyed, meeting with small business owners. And I met a couple of very, very talented small business owners who put their heart and soul into the business. And now they thought maybe it would fail because the Port of Baltimore was closed. And they ran a small trucking operation, or they ran a small tow boat operations. And we sat down and we gave them optimism. And today the Port of Baltimore is 75% open shortly after the bridge collapse, something that they did not think was going to be possible when we met with them. Have a little bit of confidence that we're listening, and let's try to instill more confidence in our future. And if we do that, I think you'll see a greater spirit to get engaged in these challenging areas. So I recognize we have a challenge today, but I think it's somewhat reflective of the political move of our country, which is very divided, which I find to be unacceptable. That's why I like Linda so much, because the two of us like to talk together, and we don't want to give away any secrets, but I believe we're registered in different political parties, and yet we like each other.
I think you're right. But I do think that one of the things, and I absolutely agree with so much of what you said, Senator Cardin, is absolutely true. I think one of the things that is a great impediment to business growth and to reinvesting in the business is when there's uncertainties about what policies are going to be impacted. If there is uncertainty about what taxes are going to be levied or changed, what the regulatory environment is going to be relative to taxes, or just, other regulations, in general. If you have entrepreneurs that are really trying and struggle to grow their business, and yet they don't know, well, am I going to be paying the same amount of tax I am this year? Is that tax law that's in place today not going to be in place tomorrow? It's benefiting me now, but I'm unsure about whether or not I should continue to invest in my business because it may cost me more and I may not be able to afford this, if these regulations or this policy expires. So there are a lot of, policy decisions, that are made, and policies that are put in place that do impact businesses as they are growing. And I can tell you, one particular one, which was part of the Trump administration tax policy that allowed small businesses to write off in the year in which they made their capital investment, to write it all off in that particular year. And that did give a lot of growth to small businesses. And I'll give you a classic example. There was a business that I was touring. There was a bread baker just outside of Boston. And I toured this facility. And I have to tell you, you walk into this bakery and it's like the size of a warehouse. You've got all of these ovens and they're baking rye bread and sourdough bread and regular bread. You can hardly wait to have a piece of bread when you leave there. All you want is a pound of butter to go with it when you leave. But I was talking to, this owner, and he pointed to this one here because I was talking to him about was the new tax policy beneficial to him? And he said, you see this space over here? And I said, yes. And he said, that's where a new oven is going. And he said, because I can write it off, he said, and it is $1 million for this oven. He said, but I already have the business, because he was a national baker. He produced a lot of white label bread for Trader Joe's and other markets. And he said, but I already have the space, I already have the business, and I'm ready to hire more people, to put in right away. So there was a direct benefit right away, that he saw for his particular business. He made the investment in the oven. He already could write it off and was ready to go with that business. Now, if that particular tax policy is going to expire, how does that impact, someone else that might be looking, a farmer who's going to buy a new combine or whatever it is? Those are the kinds of uncertainties in the marketplace that might prevent you from growing or taking that next step.
So, Senator, I know you've got to get back to voting, but in the little bit of time we have left, you are retiring at the end of this term. Yes, it was always a privilege and pleasure to work with you, both on the committee and behind the scenes on PPP. But you've done so much for small businesses, and because of your dedication to entrepreneurship in this country, what do you view to be your most important legacy? What's your most important contribution to small businesses in this country that you'd like to highlight?
Well, first of all, I am not running for reelection. That is correct. But I assure you, I am not going to be retiring. I'm going to be still.
Sorry.
But that's okay. It's a common comment that people make.
Retiring from the Senate.
I've been very, very fortunate. This will be my 58th year in consecutive elected office. So I started in the Maryland General Assembly when I was a law student. I had the opportunity to be Speaker of the House, which was a great honor in Maryland, and a great opportunity for me, and now to serve in the United States Senate. So I've had an incredible opportunity. As I said earlier, I wanted to make a mark in small businesses, and where I guess I'm the most proud about, and Linda, you're absolutely right. Small businesses, all businesses want predictable policies. If you have a situation where you have one party enact a policy 1 year and after the next election that gets repealed and the other party enacts a different policy, it's going to be disruptive to small businesses. So we want to have a more stable environment. And I have worked with Republicans in small business, whether it's Marco Rubio or now Joni Ernst. We work together to try to get good policies in place. And I think we've done that for small businesses. I think there is a predictability as to the help that is available. I think what we established during COVID is that your government's going to be there during tough times if it is necessary to preserve our economy. So I am proud of what we did for small businesses during the COVID experience that you were part of. To me, that's a legacy that I know I see more and more businesses today basically tell me they would not have been in business but for the Paycheck Protection Program. So I am proud about that. I'm also proud of what I've been able to do for the underserved communities, whether it is to strengthen the CDFI funding programs or making the Community Advantage 7A program permanent, which we now have a quasi-permanent relationship for the smaller 7A programs for small business. I'm very, very proud that I was able to establish during these last 3 or 4 years from 1 women's business center to 4 in our state. To me, that's a major plus for small businesses. What we've been able to do with a veterans business outreach center, the first in our state. These are all areas that have helped small business growth. And I am particularly pleased that I've been able to strengthen our environmental commitment to the Chesapeake Bay, where so many small business operators to help our watermen, which is an incredible historical field for business in Maryland. And we've been able to get H-2B visas so that they can continue their business operations. So in the space of small businesses, I am very proud of what we've been able to do working together. We have a very healthy small business community in our state in so many different areas. And when I think back about the fact that I was engaged in foreign policy issues and human rights, I was engaged in healthcare issues, preventive healthcare, I was engaged in finance issues on pension reforms, et cetera. I am proud of my legacy to help small business growth in our state, and thank you for mentioning that.
And we thank you for that.
So we are approaching 6:30, and I believe, Senator, you do have a binding end to this, so I want to be very respectful of your time. If you have a minute, Linda, I'd love to ask you the same question. What do you see as your most important legacy from SBA? And then I'll bring it to a close.
Does it just have to be SBA?
Okay, your most important legacy.
Well, I think I spent the predominance of my career, you may or may not know, in World Wrestling Entertainment, growing that from a 2-person business to then a global empire. And so it's not so much that the brand is the biggest legacy that I have, but I think all of the different businesses that I learned along the way that were then incorporated into WWE, which is a part of what many of you may be looking at or dealing with now. I mean, you learn the licensing business for NILs. That was a big part of it at that particular time, and how to capitalize on that particular aspect of business. The music industry, you know, and what are the royalties that have to be paid for composing and all of that. So I think if I look back on my legacy, it taking all of that knowledge that I did learn over that period of time and having the wonderful opportunity of being exposed to so many particular businesses. I think my legacy was that we took chances, we took risks. Not all of them were profitable. Not all of them were the ways that they needed to go, but you learn from that and you just keep going. And so then as I decided to get into public service and go into SBA, I think I really was able to take that experience and talk to business leaders when I was out, you know, on, we'll call it on the trail, not on the campaign trail, but just out talking to businesses and let them know, I get it. I get what you're talking about. Tell me more what it is that you need from us, so that we could work with Senator Cardin and the Small Business Committee and really implement a lot of that different policy into place. So I think if I would like to think I left a legacy there, it was helping to fine tune SBA into being attentive into the community and working with our local banks and being ready for PPP when it did come along and helping to implement it. And I remember hearing Secretary Mnuchin say, we've got 6 weeks to get this money into people's hands.
Yeah.
That was a phenomenal,
He told you 6, he told me 1.
Yeah. But it was a great, and I'm being redundant, it was a great privilege to work with you. And it's the Senate's loss, but I know that you will be working still in the community. Thank you, sir, for
Thank
all your
you.
service.
Well, with that, I want to very much take this opportunity to thank our guests. I can say that as a result of this evening's session, I feel more optimistic than the NFIB survey would have us believe. But it was an enormous privilege to host both of you this evening.
Thank you.
You are two of the most important, you've had some of the most profound impact on the nation's small businesses. And so I'm very grateful for you taking the time to join us at the University of Maryland to talk about this. So if my audience will please join me in thanking our participants. Thank you to you both. Senator, thank you. I know you've got to go vote. Thank you so much for joining us. And I think the dean's going to present a gift
Oh,
to
wow.
our guest in person. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it. Good to be with you.